The Gupta dynasty is one of the most eminent dynasties of Indian history. The Guptas made such an impact on Indian history that its effects are tangible even today. They ruled this part of India for about 300 years. That left a lasting impression not only on the Indian subcontinent but elsewhere in the world as well. Art and science flourished, philosophy and religion thrived, music and painting, dance and drama, sculpture and architecture all seem to have received a shot in the arm. The Gupta emperors were not only patrons of artists and intellectuals, but they themselves were artists, as several gold coins depict. This presentation is a first session on the cultural contribution of the Guptas.
Gupta society in general was marked by a caste system, there was a revival of Brahmanism, and the position of women in general is said to have declined. However, to know more about society in the Gupta period, we have here with us Professor Taupati Sen Gupta. Ma'am, what was social life in general like during the Gupta period?
For the social history of the Guptas, we do not have much direct literary evidence except for the accounts of two foreign travelers, Fa Yan and Yan Chang, and we have to glean our information from the various literary records of the Gupta period, mainly the Vedas and the Puran epics, which were given their final form in the Gupta period. Then we have a new corpus of literature known as the Puranas, yes. And we have the Smritis and the Niti Shastras. Position of women, there was a general decline in the position of women. Although we find that there was a great deal of acculturation in the Gupta period with so many foreign races coming into our country and they being absorbed, there was a conscious effort to stop the contamination of the castes. And naturally, to stop the contamination of the caste was to restrict the marriage rules. And here we find the norms of Manu becoming very much acceptable. The norms of Manu dominated the treatment of society of its women folk. So we find, what does Manu say? He went to the extent of saying that a woman is like a musical instrument. She needs to be beaten properly from time to time so that she provides the right kind of response. So in this, therefore, the first thing that would dominate a woman's life was the marriage norms. In general, there were 8 forms of marriages in the Gupta period. 8 forms of marriages like the Brahma, Daiva, Arsha, Rakshasa, Paishacha. These are the various. Prajapatya marriage was considered to be the most acceptable and the ideal form of marriage, where there was a parity between the bride and the groom. That is why the Prajapatya marriage has always been considered as an ideal marriage. The other thing, the widow remarriage was not really banned, but it was looked upon as a social taboo. Okay, the marriage of a widow. And we find inscriptions from Madhya Pradesh talking about sati. And we do not find women playing any vital role in politics, except for one reference to Prabhavati Gupta, wife of Chandragupta II, who was married to Vakataka Rudrasena, and after the premature death of her husband, she became the regent, reigning in the name of her infant son, minor son, and Prabhavati Gupta became very instrumental, very important in the Gupta-Vakataka relationship. Another very important section of women in this period were the Ganikas, or the courtesans. Okay, the Ganika in Vatsayana's Kama Sutra, we have great reference to this Ganika. If you want to know about the various qualities, the various perfections that a woman could attain, it was the Ganikas, because they were very much in the business of entertainment. So there the perfection was necessary. Perfection in dress, perfection in manners, perfection in talent, so that there was a higher and a greater clientele. And of course, the epitome of all this is Vasanta Sena in Mrichakatikam.
आप कौन है?
मेरा नाम वसंत सेना है।
People during the Gupta rule wore elegant and attractive outfits. Coins, paintings and sculpture give detailed description of the dresses and ornaments used during that time. The women's dress had three parts: the cover of the upper part, the bodice, the lower garment, the antarya, and a mantle or the uttarya. Women did not wear turbans as they did during the Vedic age. A man wore a dhoti and had an upper garment, the uttarya, and used an ushnisha or the turban. There are also references of innumerable varieties of ornaments worn both by men and women.
When we talk about one society, it is very important to talk about the existence of slavery.
Yes, ma'am. Did slavery at all exist in ancient India?
There are different kinds of opinions, because the word dasa actually doesn't pertain to slavery.
In the European sense?
In the European sense, we do not have slavery, but of course there was always the exploitation of the poor, bonded labor or vishti, and sometimes their condition was not anything better than the slaves of Europe, except that they did not lose their total freedom. And slavery was also confined to the lowest among the caste, that is the Shudras. Gupta kings were Brahmanical kings. They believed in the bestowing of royal, divine power in them, and that is why they performed the various sacrifices. Sacrifices became very important. We find reference to the Gupta kings performing the horse sacrifice, Ashwamedha, which was very expensive, very elaborate, and it was symbolic of assimilating divine power within the king's self. And Brahmanical religion was the dominant religion of the elite in this society, and there is one more thing we find, that at one end we find the complication of religions, the complication of prayers, the complication of sacrifices, where the Brahman plays very important role. He is acting as the mediator between the God and the man, okay, bestowing divine power in the person of the monarch. On the other side, we find that one society is gradually being weaned away from this complicated, elaborate, wasteful and expensive religious practices, and they are developing the Bhagavata norm. In this Gupta period, we find that Vedic goddesses are going in the background. We find the immense rise of Krishna and Shiva, and when we talk of Krishna, Krishna is one of the forms of Vishnu. So Vishnu comes in the forefront because it is generally the settled peasant society where Krishna the shepherd, the Krishna plays a very important role. So the peasantization of society brought Krishna to the forefront. So in the Gupta, in this period, we find that most of the Gupta kings are conforming to Vishnu. Vishnu is emerging as the supreme deity, and along with Vishnu, of course, there is Shiva, and we find the worship of the Shiva in the Linga form also, okay, symbolical worship of Shiva. So we find the duality of deities in this period, the Shiva and the Vishnu. But most of the Gupta kings, you must remember, were devotees of Vishnu. Some were the devotees of Kartikeya. Kalidas as Kumar Sambhavam tells us about that, birth of Kartikeya. And also there was Buddhism, very important, catering to the needs of a very important section of the people. And of course, Jainism was not a dying religion at all. In Buddhism also we find many developments. The Mahayana and the Hinayana. Hinayana is to some extent going into the background, and the Mahayana coming into the forefront. And Mahayana talks about what? Mahayana talks about the Bodhisattva who sacrifices his own salvation for helping the salvation of others. So concept of the compassionate Bodhisattva is a very important development in the Gupta period so far as Buddhism is concerned. And Buddha and Buddhism, the Bodhisattvas, they become the unending source of creation both for the painter and the sculptor. And there is a great increase in the treatises related to Buddhism. We have Vasubandhu, we have Dignaga, who were giants in the field of Buddhistic metaphysical thoughts. And there was also an overwhelming rise of the Shakti worship, or the worship of the female energy.
It was during their time that world-famous universities like Nalanda flourished. Some of these universities offered a variety of subjects, while others were more specialized. Takshashila, the oldest one, specialized in medicine. Valapi specialized in religious learning, law and medicine. Ujjain was well known for astronomy. Ajanta was well known for art and architecture, and Sarnath specialized in the study of Buddhist scriptures.
Nalanda appears to have been a center of scholarship even at the time of the Buddha. Whether the university existed at that time is, however, doubtful. But there is no doubt that the university received substantial patronage during the reign of the Guptas and became a major center of learning. The university had excellent infrastructure, which included a great complex of hostels, lecture halls, and a world-famous library housed in 3 buildings called the Ratna Ranjika, Ratna Sagara and the Ratnodadhi. The Central College building had 8 large halls and about 300 apartments attached to it. Though getting admission was tough, but once admitted, education was absolutely free. Nalanda had students from China, Korea, Japan, Indonesia and Tibet, besides of course students from both North and South India.
Well, we find two major trends in literature. One was the secular literature, the other was the religious literature. The secular literature, the religious literature is of course the codification of the Vedas, the rise of the Puranas. To some extent, epic literature was also influenced by religion, because we have the theory of the incarnation of Vishnu in Rama and in Krishna. We have the various Niti Shastras. Then of course we have the kavyas, the artificial kavyas. Okay, the artificial kavyas became very important in the Gupta period. The creative energy of the Gupta period was exemplified at its best in the creation of the literature, especially the drama. We find the drama as a major source of entertainment for the rich and the poor. The dramatists that we are talking about are the dramatists of the elite society. We have Kalidasa, we have Shudraka, and Kalidasa is famous for his kavyas. He is also famous for the various plays that he's written, and according to Max Muller, the greatest play ever written in the history of mankind is Shakuntala, Abhigyan Shakuntalam, which is one of the favorites through generations. Of course, we have Shudraka, another giant, is Mitchakatikam.
आओ, हम तुम्हारी गाड़ी भी सोने की बना देते हैं, चमचम करती हुई। हाँ। हाँ, ये लो, हो गई ना? जाओ, खेलो। सुनो, अब तो मैं तुम्हारी माँ जैसी लगती हूँ ना? ये लो।
Drama was definitely influenced by the Greek and the other races that came from outside the borders of India. Shakuntala, for that matter, is considered as a product of a foreign influence, but to what extent that is true we do not know. We have our own Bharatanatyam Shastra, okay, that is the theatrical arts, the treatise on the theatrical arts, but the development of the dramatic arts, the stagecraft, the props that we find, the various artists and how they would handle the various assignments given to them, it is elaborately discussed in Bharatanatyam Shastra. So it could be inspired by the foreign people, races who came to India over the centuries, but it was very much the product of the Indian genius and very much inspired by the Indian situation.
Aryabhata is considered to be one of the earliest astronomers. He already knew that the earth spins on its axis, the earth moves round the sun, and the moon rotates round the earth. He talks about the position of the planets in relation to its movement round the sun. He refers to the light of the planets and the moon as reflection from the sun. He goes as far as to explain the eclipse of the moon and the sun, day and night, the contours of the earth, and the length of the year exactly as 365 days. He was born in Pataliputra in 476 AD and wrote his famous book Aryabhatya at the age of 23. One of his works, which is now lost, the Aryabhatta Siddhanta, had a profound influence on Islamic astronomy, while his treatise called Kalakriya deals with astronomy. In Ganita, he deals with mathematics. He gave to the world the zero and the decimal system. The Greeks and then later the Arabs adopted his works.
Another well-known astronomer of the time was Varahamihira. His knowledge of Western astronomy was stupendous. In his compendium entitled the Panch Siddhantika, he expounded Greek, Roman, Egyptian and even Indian astronomy. His other works include the Laghu Jataka, the Brihad Jataka, the Yoga Yatra, the Brihata Samhita and the Vivaha Pataka.
This first session on the cultural contributions of the Gupta period dealt with the Gupta society on the whole. This program explored the social conditions, the position of women, the state of education, the nature of literature and theatre, the existent religion, the dress and ornaments, and extent of astronomical study that took place during that time. In the next session, the contribution of the Guptas in the field of art, architecture, sculpture, painting and music would be discussed.